Hello students, the next topic that we will be reading in this course is about Aeolian landscapes. Now the term Aeolian is derived from Greek mythology, from a god named Aeolus, whose picture you can see in the presentation as well. Aeolus is known as the keeper of wind or the gods of wind. Hence anything that is to do with the term Aeolian or Aeolial means a landscape derived by the action of wind. In this lesson, we will be reading about wind as a geomorphic agent, how wind processes operate, and what are the various landforms which are fashioned by wind erosion and wind deposition. Talking about wind as an agent of transport, we are automatically talking about wind as an agent of erosion and deposition as well. Why? Because for you to able to transport some sediment grains, you first need to dislodge or remove these grains from the surface. And this removal of grain would involve the process of erosion. After a while, where you have transported these grains in suspension in air, these grains will be deposited somewhere. So automatically the process of deposition is also involved. Also from our day-to-day observation, we know that dry areas where the content of moisture in the soil is low or where there is no vegetation cover on the surface, they are most vulnerable to the action of wind erosion. Example, you might have noticed fallow fields, fields which are left barren after the harvesting of crop. They are very susceptible to wind erosion, provided there is no vegetation cover over it or the moisture content in the soil is low. This picture here shows various hyper-arid, arid and semi-arid deserts across the globe. Now these deserts, they may be hot like Sahara and Thar, or these may be cold like the cold arid deserts of Spiti and Ladakh. Hyper-arid regions, they have had not any rainfall in past 12 months, whereas arid regions are those regions where the annual rainfall is less than 250 millimeter. Semi-arid regions are those regions where the annual rainfall range between 250 and 500 millimeters. Now these regions, they are very much vulnerable or prone to the wind erosion. Why? Because the moisture content of the soil is low and often there is negligible vegetation cover offering any protection from the wind. Now can you give me examples of potential areas where wind processes will be dominant? Do write it in your notebooks. Talking about the Aeolian processes, air can move in three ways, either as streamlines, which are parallel layers of moving air, or as turbulent flow, where the movement of air is irregular, moving sideways, or thirdly, as vortices, where the motion of air is along a parallel central axis, as you can see in the picture on the right. Talking about the wind velocity profile, this is how it looks like. So at the bottom, we have the minimum velocity of air, and as we move at the top of the atmosphere, the velocity of wind goes on increasing. Why so? Because at the bottom layer, the layer of air is experiencing frictional drag from the surface. This surface could be land or water. And this frictional drag goes on decreasing as we move upper in the atmosphere. Did we study similar velocity profile earlier? If yes, where? What similarities do you see between this profile and that profile? Now, this graph, which is given in your book, is also a wind velocity profile. But the graph, as you notice, is a straight line rather than an arc, as seen in the previous slide. Why so? Because the axis, the y-axis here, is not normal arithmetic scale, but it is drawn on logarithmic scale. Therefore, we are getting a straight line. Now here, wind velocity, it is dependent on many factors. What are those factors on which the wind velocity depends? Can you write it down in your notebooks?